Good afternoon. Can I just check we're recording, Leona? Yes. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the LRB meeting. My name is Jim McLean and I'm the Vice Chair of the local review body, and elected members present here today are Councillor Paul Edlin, Councillor Annie Ireland, Councillor Chris Lundy and Provost Montague. The officers present are Jennifer Graham, the Clerk to the local review body, Mark Brand is the Independent Planning Advisor to the local review body, Siobhan Wilson is the Legal Advisor and is responsible for preparing the local review body's decision notice to provide advice as necessary. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes. Councillors Cunningham and Morrison.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? Thank you. Now, the business to consider today, the sites, we visited 3 sites prior to today's meeting, and the details of the first case are as follows. Notice of review, alteration to existing side dormer to increase its size and direction of dormer to rear of dwelling, 15 Nethercliff Avenue, Netherley, East Renfrewshire. Reference number is 2021/0999/TP. Do we have sufficient information to determine the review today? Yes, okay, I'm happy to go on. Mark will no doubt wish to highlight that the policy in the Local Development Plan LDP and the Supplementary Planning Guidance and Council Policy, and that members should give consideration to them in the assessment of review of the case. Yeah, Mark, would you like to comment on that?
Thank you, Chair. The application is in Ward 4. There were no objections to this particular application. I'll just summarise the case officer's assessment. This is a modified proposal from a previous refused application in terms of size and massing. The proposal was assessed against policies D1 and D1.1, which require that development should not result in significant loss of character to the surrounding area and should complement the scale and character of the existing building. The predominant house style in Nethercliff Avenue are hipped, roofed bungalows with dormer windows in many shapes and sizes, but it is considered that these accord with the policy requirements. This proposal, however, constitutes overdevelopment of the roofscape with detrimental impact to both house and neighbourhood. These impacts are exacerbated by the corner location of the building. I'll now quickly summarise the appellant's case for appeal. The proposal offers a reduction in size from the original application. The revised design includes a setback connection between the side dormer and the rear dormer to reduce visual impact from Leebank Drive. This reduces the mass of the development and keeps the corner roof ridge almost intact, thereby retaining the style of the bungalow with 4 hips to the roof. The new rear dormer will keep within the existing roof line to be out of the sight line from the front of the street. Grey slate will be used to dress the sides of the dormers to blend them with the existing roof. The appellant also draws attention to other roof extensions in the vicinity. The reason for refusal was that the application was contrary to policies D1 and D1.1. In the event of this review being upheld, the following conditions should be attached to any planning permission thus granted. The development hereby approved must be begun no later than the expiration of 3 years beginning with the date on which permission is granted, or, as the case may be, deemed to be granted. And secondly, development shall not commence until samples of the external finishing materials to be used on the proposed development have been submitted to and approved in writing by the planning authority. Thereafter, the development shall be implemented in accordance with the approved details. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. I'd like to open up to members of the committee to make any further comment. Oh, sorry, Councillor Ireland.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm looking at the plans in front of me, and I can actually see why the planning officer has came to the conclusion on this. We've seen many dormers, we see them all the time, but I do take it's the corner section that is eating into that's going over the ridge line that I particularly can see why they have refused this application. So I do find myself in agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking at that, Councillor. It's very slightly, but it does kind of go against as Mark says, the D1 policy. If that was brought in slightly, then it would look a lot better and be probably fine. But I don't see the kind of point of doing this, and I would tend to agree with them as well. Provost.
You can sympathise with families in the area and families with growing families that they want to rearrange the internal aspects of their family dwelling to accommodate that family. So it is so understandable and sympathetic to it, but it's the planning aspects that we need to address really, and it is the policy D1.1 and about the overdevelopment of roof space and the corner location aspects to it. So I would just have to support the officer's recommendation in this as well and refuse.
Thank you, Provost. Any other comments? No? Well, I think we're not going to overturn the officer's decision, so we're quite happy to leave it as it is. Yep, agreed. Okay. Okay. The next one is change of use from Class 2 to hot food takeaway. So again, this including erection of flue to rear, Lloyds TSB 85 Main Street, Thornley Bank, East Renfrewshire, reference number 2021/0973/TB. The first issue to consider is whether the local review body wishes to give consideration to new evidence, which consists of proof of inquiries received to the marketing agency, all relating to hot food takeaway use, including Appendix 8. And the applicant has submitted that were not before the appointed officers when the original decision was made. Can I just pass this over to Siobhan to make some further comment?
Yeah, so there is new information within your papers. However, it's not a new matter or a topic. The issue was already addressed within the report of handling. There was discussions between the appointed officer and the applicant in terms of the advertisement and the interest in the property and the interest in the use types. So it's not a new matter, therefore the new information that was provided can be considered by the LRB. It doesn't need to wait to be considered till next time either, because the appointed officer has already addressed the matter in the report of handling.
Thank you, Siobhan. So we're happy to continue with the information we have. Okay, I'll pass over to Mr. Brand. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, if you don't mind, there were two applications of the site. They're both identical. If I just read one, it'll save us. Yep.
We'll have to go through them anyway, but we'll do if you just read the two of them.
Sure. The application is in Ward 3, Giffnick and Thornley Bank. There was one objection on the grounds of a saturated market in hot foods, takeaways, and that they were not neighbour notified. The case officer, I'll summarise the case officer's assessment. Permission is sought to subdivide the former bank into 2 units with change of use from Class 2 to hot food takeaway sui generis, with new shop front and extraction flues to the rear. The application was assessed against Policy D1 and Policy SG10. Policy SG10 states that the neighbourhood centres are the preferred location for footfall generating uses. It also states that proposals for hot food takeaways in neighbourhood centres will be required to avoid concentration, including cumulatively with other existing hot food takeaways, and will not result in a detrimental impact on the overall character and amenity of the area. There are 10 units in this section of the street parade, including 4 existing hot food takeaways. The addition of a single further takeaway would increase the concentration to 50%. Conversion into 2 takeaway units would bring this to 60% of units in that section of street. Because the building was Class 2 financial use, there is no policy requirement to provide evidence that the unit was marketed for Class 2 use for 6 months. This requirement only applies when there is an application to change Class 1 use retail to hot food takeaway. I would just add that we have, following our Siobhan's advice, that we can consider the evidence which was provided along those lines about the marketing evidence. The reasons for refusal. The proposal would result in over-concentration with other hot food takeaways, which would erode the mix and diversity of retail uses and have a detrimental impact on the overall character and amenity of the area. I'll now quickly summarise the appellant's appeal. The applicant's marketing agency have been marketing the property for over 6 months, either as a whole or as divided units. All inquiries have been for hot food takeaway use. There have been no inquiries for continuing Class 2 use. The refusal of consent contributes to the continuing presence of a vacant unit and the decline of the shopping parade. The appellant states that Greggs and Subway are classified as Class 1 uses and should not be counted as hot food takeaways. The appellant states that they believe the decline in the mix of uses in town centres is not linked to the over-concentration of hot food, but the rise in online shopping. In the event of this review being upheld, the following conditions should be attached to any planning permission granted. 1. Noise from the proposed development and any associated equipment shall not exceed residential noise rating curve 25 between the hours of 2300 and 700 and curve 35 between 0700 and 2300 hours. And secondly, between the hours of 0800 and 2000, the measured noise level emitted from the premises shall not exceed the pre-existing background noise level by more than 4 decibels. That's my summary. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. Pass over to the committee for any comments they would like to make. Councillor Lundy.
I think, as Mark mentioned, and I think all of us seen when we were out on the visit, there are a number of other hot food takeaways in the vicinity, and I think that's an important consideration to take into place. But I also think that the additional information is important, not to disregard the fact that all of the interested parties were wanting to change the use to be a hot food takeaway, because it's important that we don't leave dozens of empty shop units as well.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments? Councillor Edlin.
This is a finely balanced argument, and I thought about it a lot more since I saw it today. I do believe that hot food is one of these things that seem to expand with the supply. In other words, no matter how many of these buildings that are opening, facilities that are opening, the market seems to absorb them, and they all seem to trade profitably and successfully. And this is a particularly deprived area of East Renfrewshire. And I am conscious that by allowing this to go ahead, we will create probably 20 plus jobs in the facility and provide a facility for people that, if we don't grant this, will just leave empty buildings, or I think things are unviable. And my view is that, bearing that in mind, we should approve this. Bearing that in mind.
Thank you, Councillor Edlin. Provost.
I I would uphold the planning officer's recommendation. This really for a number of reasons. As Councillor Lundy pointed out, there are a number of places there that do takeaways, although they're not classed as such, and it just seems to be an over-provision of that kind of shop or that kind of business is about food and either sitting in or taking out food. And I don't see that that necessarily is footfall generating when you see so many of the establishments there. They open at night, they're closed during the day. So it certainly doesn't do much for the vibrancy of the area. And given that it is an area that does need regeneration, then I would particularly want to leave it a while longer to see if something can be done with those premises rather than adding to what seems to be an over-provision currently. So I would uphold the planning officer's recommendation and refuse. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. Councillor Ireland.
Thank you. I'm in agreement with Provost and Councillor Lundy about the over-provision and the over-concentration. I think it became really obvious when we were there that this would lead to that. I understand that. I think Councillor Lundy was saying that there had been the interested parties were interested. It was Class 3 sui generis, or was it Class 3 sui generis, or just Class? I would agree with the Provost. I would like to see it marketed a bit longer and specifically not targeted to that Class 3 sui generis. But I do think that it was very obvious it was going to be an over-provision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ireland. I kind of tend to agree with everything that's been said. You know, when is enough enough? But then again, do we just leave it sitting vacant and it's an empty space there? And again, it will provide jobs, but then you come back to the part of, is it going to be over-provision in that area for that sort of thing? And I kind of tend to swing that way myself, that there will be an over-provision then if we do, because that would be every shop in that one selling some form. Even the Spar sells some form. It would be every single one. And I know it's different, but I would tend to go that way, that it just would be saturation point with that. And I would tend to just support the refusal. If anyone's otherwise minded, can we put that as...
Can I second that proposal? Thanks.
Everybody happy? Okay, thank you. The third case is the review, which is again similar to the last one, so I don't think we need to hear Mr Brand's comments on it. We've already heard them, and I think it's just a decision for the committee to make if they've got anything else to add, or do we just agree to uphold the refusal on it? Yeah, agreed. Thank you. The final one is erection of detached 2 and 1/2 storey dwelling. It's an amendment to planning permission reference 2021/0693/TP to allow alterations, deleting basements and alterations to roof profile at 29 Rookinglen Road, Giffnock, East Renfrewshire. Are we all happy that we have sufficient information to determine the review just now? Okay, could I then pass over to Mark, please? Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. This is an amendment to the alterations of a roof design. It's in Ward 3, Giffnock and Thornley Bank. There were 3 objections, 2 objecting to the actual amendment and 1 neutral. The reasons for objections were overlooking, loss of daylight, overshadowing, impact on trees, noise during construction, the size and overdevelopment of the plot. The case officer's assessment can be summarised as follows. The original application which the appellant seeks to amend is for a dwelling substantially larger than the one it replaced. The size would have been out of keeping and detrimental to the character of the area, but for the roof design. Central to the building, being given consent, was the careful attention to the roof, using a design solution of varied roof heights to break up the mass of the building and lessen its impact on the streetscape. For proposed alteration to change the roof design from 2 full height and 1 lower height sections to a single height increases the mass of the building to a degree which makes it dominant and incongruous in the streetscape. The objections relating to overlooking, overshadowing, loss of privacy are not regarded as pertinent, but the objection regarding overdevelopment and loss of trees are noted. The proposal is contrary to policy D1, as the alteration of would significantly add to the massing of the building, causing it to be detrimental to the character of the area. I'll now quickly summarise the appellant's reason for their appeal. The approved roof design is technically difficult to achieve. It requires a complicated bespoke build. The additional weight of the roof requires additional groundworks and foundations. The roof weight cannot be supported by the external walls and requires internal metal support structures which take up space within the house. The bespoke customisation of the timber frame invalidates the warranty which comes with such timber frames. Future maintenance of the roof is a concern given the complexity of the build and the restricted access to roof space and number of component parts. In the event of the review being upheld, the following conditions should be attached to any planning permission granted. The development must be begun no later than 3 years, beginning on the date on which permission is granted, or as the case may be deemed to be granted. And secondly, development should not commence until samples of the external finishing materials to be used on the proposed development have been submitted and approved in writing by the planning authority. I would add that because we didn't have anything to look at on site, I can put up a drawing on the screen if that would be helpful for people to, for the board to consider. If you I've chosen this plan here because it helpfully has this. If you see this dotted line here, that was the application, that was what was granted in the application. The roof would run along here, then drop down to this lower level, but before sort of like ending here. So it had a broken roof line. This application would take away that and just have a single height running from east to west right along the ridge top. So this bit here, this drop down, has the amendment is to remove that. I'll just try and show an overhead. There we go. Yep, so it becomes like a 4-hipped roof. There's no issues with these windows. It's just the simple, but the size and the profile of it, which has what were deemed to be contrary to policy D1. So I'll just go back to the any questions on that, or?
Thank you, Mark. Is there any comments or questions from the panel? Well, can I just make a quick one? I've actually looked at the new application, and it's actually substantially different, really, than what the one that was passed. I don't know if you've got a picture of it for those who haven't seen it, but it is quite a difference. I don't know if I've got it on my computer just now, but I don't know if members can see that. Are you able to show that one, Mark? I was actually in the planning applications itself, so I don't know if it shows it on the review body papers. Yes, it's on page 295. It is substantially different from the approved application. I don't know if anyone wants to comment further on that. Councillor Ireland?
I'm in agreement that we uphold the officer's decision to refuse on this. I just wanted to double check if I'm reading these notes correctly, that planning application was approved for the one that the applicant wishes to amend on the 2nd of March, but that this application for the amendment was put in on the 26th of April. Have I got the dates right on that? Because I know that substantial work must have been done, and then this application was. It's quite soon after it was approved that this application was for the amendment was put in. Is that correct? Am I reading that right?
We have the application for review dated as planning appeal 3rd of August 22. Let's check my notes. Yeah, this application, subject to this appeal, was submitted on 3rd of August. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So it's not just as tight as I was reading it first. Thank you. I think still looking at the picture that I found now on that page, I'm fully in agreement with the decision.
I would tend to agree in that. I mean, looking at what they're trying to do, it begs the question, why didn't they do that at the start? And why they came on with this, I would tend to uphold the decision. Anyone else? Any comments to make? Councillor Edlin?
I would agree with the comments. Also, looking at the pictures, it does appear. I thought initially the point was by the candidate the applicant was to save some money in the construction costs. But when you actually look at the pictures, it actually does, as you said, Chairman, it makes a difference to the appearance from the frontal view of the building. It makes it look completely different, and it does make it less in character with other buildings. So for that reason, I would agree with my colleagues that we should agree with the planning officer in this case.
Thank you, Councillor Edlin. Anyone otherwise minded? Okay, take it the review is upheld. That concludes our business today. Thank you very much for attending, and safe journey home. Thank you.